Ah, the sound of a bygone era. How's it going, everyone? Digital Scriptorium here, and today I want to show off how to make your own America Online Instant Messenger server, aka AIM server. I knew some projects for AIM existed, but I never dug into them until I saw a video by MattKC Bytes highlighting the retro AIM server project by MK6I. After looking it over, I figured it was time to make the dive and help show this amazing project to others by helping you all enjoy it with my hopefully easy to follow guides. I'm going to show off how to set up the server components in Windows, Linux, and macOS. Plus, I will show how to configure the AIM and ICQ clients in those different operating system variants. Before I continue on, I just want to mention that if you find this video useful or entertaining, to please like it and subscribe to my channel to keep up with my latest video happenings. I also appreciate any donations through my Ko-Fi or Patreon. Every bit helps for me to continue to improve my lab to continue to make these guides for you all to experience. Also, feel free to leave a comment of any AIM or ICQ memories you might have. Anyhow, let's continue on. Don't let the length of this video scare you off. This video is broken up into 3 major sections going over the same steps to get the server working in Windows, Linux, and macOS. Within the 3 major sections are the subsections showing how to configure the AIM and ICQ clients for the respective operating systems. Feel free to utilize the chapter timelines to jump to the section you want help with. If you need help getting Windows or Linux installed fresh, you can always follow my guides on it. Also, the websites and text document links can be found in the video's description. If any drastic changes do happen with the project, then feel free to scope out any pinned comments I might put below. I try to maintain all of my guides with updates, so make sure to check for those before continuing on. Lastly, before I dig in, I just want to mention the operating systems that this should work on. On the Windows side of things, you can use Windows 10 or 11. In Linux land, Debian 12 and Ubuntu 24 should be perfectly fine. I do also want to mention that Raspberry Pis are a perfect use case for one of these servers. In the Mac realm, macOS 12 and up should be fine, and it does work with both Intel and the modern ARM-based Macs. So with that out of the way, let us continue on to the Windows-based guide. Alright, so for the Windows-based version of this video, first thing you want to do is head over to the Retro AIM server GitHub page. And real quick, everything I'm going to show is basically directly being done out of the how to run section here. So if anything appears to not be very clear in this video, then you can always reference it in the documentation that they have. And of course, you would just click on the Windows 10 and 11 option down here to view it. Anyhow, we'll go back and I'm going to scroll up a little bit here. So the first thing to get this all rolling is we want to select the releases section. We can click on the version that's showing here, which should have the green latest font over here. So we'll click on this. And they do have some what's new stuff in here, and you can take a look at the commits here if you wanted to take a gander at those. And then if we scroll down a little bit more, then we have the different versions we can select from. So since this is the Windows portion of the guide, here is the Windows x86 and 64-bit version. So we'll click on this to download it. And then I'm going to click the Show in Folder section here. And then I'm going to right click on it, extract all. And for right now, I'm just going to extract it into the download section. And then I'm going to cut this and we're going to move it to this PC. Double click on the C drive. Let's actually create a new folder on the C drive. And let's call it AIM space server or whatever you want to call it. Just like that, I'll click out of it. And then we'll double click in here and we will paste the magic in. And if we double click on this folder, then here is the 3 files that come bundled with it. So there's the license file, which goes over the MIT license that this project uses. There's the Retro AIM server application, and then there's a settings.env file here. This is completely optional, but to make it easier to look at the settings.env file, we can actually use Notepad++ to take a look at line numbers and all that good stuff. It's completely optional, but I'm going to download it and install it real quick here in case you are not sure how to download and install it. So I'm just going to do a search for Notepad++, and here's the website. I will click on this, and download the latest version, and click on this download here, and then let's just open the file, hit yes for the UAC prompt, okay, next, I agree, next, install, and then let's just run it. And this is another optional feature before we continue, but if you go to settings up at the top, preferences, we can put this into dark mode by selecting dark mode and selecting dark mode here. And then we can actually just click this little X for the change log to get rid of that so we have a clean slate, and we can close out of that. And I'm just going to close out of these two tabs and minimize Edge for right now. So with Notepad++, like I said, it does make it easier to view line numbers that I may reference here. So if I right click on the settings.env file, and once again, if you don't want to go the Notepad++ route, you could just open it in Notepad, which is perfectly fine, but I do want to just show it off in Notepad++ so I can reference line numbers. I'm going to maximize Notepad++, and there are a series of configurations in here that you can change. Feel free to take a look at the documentation on the project page for this stuff. But really, the one that we want to look at, if I scroll down just a little bit more here, is line 51. And this is the Oscar host, the export Oscar host. By default, it's set to 127.0.0.1, which is the local host's IP. So that would mean that this is only set to allow AIM to run on this machine and no others. If you plan to set this up so that this machine is either just a server or a server and running AIM on it, but also allowing other computers on your local network to connect into it, then you would put in this machine's IP address into here. So this is, again, the option. Leave it as is if you just want to dabble with AIM just by yourself, no one else connecting in, or I'm going to change the IP to what this machine's IP is, so at least local machines on my network can connect to it. So I'm just going to delete this out, and then if you're not sure how to find the IP address of your local machine, I go down to start, and then just type in CMD, hit enter, and then I'm just going to type in ipconfig, all one word, just like that, hit enter. And I'm just looking for the IPv4 address. So this is what I'm going to put in, 192.168.60.111. Of course, your IP is most likely going to be different than that. So put in whatever your IP actually is. So here's my IP. I'm going to save it. And this is just local to my network. If you're looking to actually have this outward facing to the internet, then you can follow this information at the end of line 48 to 50. And then also the documentation on the project's page. So that is saved, so I can close out of this. We can close out a command prompt. And then at this point, we can kick off the Retro AIM server. So I will double click on this, and it's going to say Windows protected your PC. This is a perfectly safe application. So click on more info and then run anyway. And then it's going to ask us for this firewall pop-up, and we're going to allow it. So at this point, the server is listening, and one thing to note is that it does have an oscar.sqlite file here. So that gets created the first time that the server is fired up, so that's perfectly fine. Now, if you are interested in how to get the AIM client to work with the server, let's move on to that section. So I'm going to hit back, and then let's scroll down on the main page, and then look for the section that says don't have AIM installed. Check out the AIM client setup guide. So let's click on this, and it starts off with Linux in the very beginning and macOS. We want to scroll down to Windows 10 and 11. And then as it mentions here, all versions of AIM 5.x run on Windows 10 and 11 with varying degrees of success. To get started, install 5.0.2829 and set the XP compatibility mode. It does also mention that there can be a quirk in newer versions of 5.x, which you can take a look at, this AIM tamer. I've had issues with versions higher than 5.0, so my recommendation is just go with what they recommend here. But naturally, you can always feel free to check out the other versions as well, which you can find on like archive.org, as it mentions here. So I'm just going to right click on this and open link in new tab. We'll go to the oldversion.com website, and I distinctively show these videos off without using ad blocker, just for those of you who may not have ad blocker and you're experiencing the fantastic ads that are being shown off. And this is where it can get super confusing, as we have all these various ads all over the screen that are saying install this, install that. Can get very confusing into what you actually need to click on to download it. So what we actually need to click on is in this green box that turns yellow when you hover over it. Select download now. Don't click on anything here. Once again, we're referencing just this little box. And of course, if it does not fire up automatically, you can always do the click here option, but it is already downloading. So I'm going to open this in downloads again. And at this point, we can close out of Edge if you wanted to. And then double click on the AIM 50, 20, 28, 29, and yes for the UAC prompt, and just be patient. So we'll select the user agreement. We'll click next, next once more. And then my recommendation is select I'm permanently connected through a LAN, select next, and then select your country, and then you can put in a zip code and uncheck the makenetscape.com, my homepage. You probably don't want that this day and age. We'll click on next and next. Just wait for it to install. And hopefully, if all goes well, we should see setup as complete. Click OK to start AOL Instant Messenger. Click on OK. Now it is going to launch, so give it just a moment to fire up. It could be a little sluggish, but let's just wait for it to fire up first before we move on. Just gonna scoot the server terminal down. For right now, click cancel, and let's actually close out of AIM. And we can close out of the download section. And also, if you wanted to, you could delete everything that has been downloaded, as we don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to minimize the server stuff here. So highlight the AIM icon on your desktop, right click on it, go to Properties, go to the Compatibility tab. Under Compatibility Mode, check the box that says Run Program in Compatibility Mode, and then we can leave it as Windows XP Service Pack 2. That's perfectly fine. If you do see weird things happening, you could always toggle even older versions like 98, or you may even want to try Service Pack 3 for XP, but I have not seen any issues, at least with my machine, running it under Service Pack 2, so we can click on Apply and OK. Next, let's fire it up. Select yes for the UAC prompt, and then before you do anything, let's go into Setup, aka the wrench icon, and then it should bring us into the sign on, sign off section. If it doesn't, click on that. And in the bottom right section is the connection button. Click on this, and then blank out the current host configuration, and then type in the IP address of your server. Now, if you left it as the 127.0.0.1 configuration, you can type in the 127.0.0.1 here, or if you changed it to the IP of the server to allow others to connect in, set your IP address, leave the port as is. You should be able to leave everything else as is here as well. Click on OK, OK once more. Now at this point, this should be configured to connect up. By default, in the env file that we went into to change the IP address, there is a setting in there that you can turn off, but by default, it actually allows you to auto-create a screen name if you attempt an authentication against the server. So what that means is that if I type in the screen name of test1, and then I'll just type in the password test1, whatever you want to type in, and then I just click either enter or click sign on, then it will immediately create that screen name, and you can see the connection down here and where it's connecting from. So that's pretty snazzy, but once again, you can feel free to change account screen name auto creation off if you wanted to. Now naturally, this was designed for an older operating system with a much older web browser, so you may get this pop up as it tries to reach out to the aimtoday.aol.com reference here. You can just click yes for this. If you really wanted to, you could go through this whole welcome wizard thing here, but I'm just going to click cancel. And at this point, we are connected up. Now, if someone were to connect in from another machine, which I'm just going to do right now just to quickly show, then we will see the connection here. Just as we saw with the local machine, now we have another machine on the network connecting in. And then we can even test sending a message real quick. And I've got a little pop-up here saying that Digital is attempting to chat with me. I'm going to click yes. And here we are. I'll respond back. And you can notice that there are messages being sent here as well. So we can just message back and forth. So naturally, if you've got multiple people in your house that you want to set AIM up on, then you can all have a family chat system going on, which is pretty snazzy. Now that was showing off the AIM client. However, if we go back to the project's main page, there is the ICQ client also, which I'm just going to show off real quick. So let's click on the ICQ client setup guide, and let's click on Windows, and then step 1, download the ICQ client. I'm just going to right click on this and select open a new tab, and then on archive.org's website, let's click on the Windows executable. That should download it for us. So we can run the installer now and select yes for the UAC prompt. And then let's click on next. Next again, let it install. Just be patient as this works its magic. If all goes well, we should see the installation complete pop-up. Click on OK. And then at this point, let's actually click the X to get out of this. Do not go through any of those steps. We can go ahead and close out of Edge. We can keep the server running, that's fine. Let's go to start and then type in regedit, all one word, hit enter, select yes for the UAC prompt, and let's just maximize this. Expand out HKey current user, and then look for software, expand that out, and then locate the Mirabilis, expand that out, expand out ICQ, and then let's go into the default prefs, and then I'm just going to adjust the columns a little bit here, just so we can see everything. And then look for default server host. Let's highlight it, right click on it, and select modify. And then you can, of course, type in the 127.0.0.1 here if you did not set the IP address. Or if you did set the IP, then type in the IP of your server. And we can click on OK. One thing just to mention, I'm not going to actually change it here, but there is also the default server port. If you right click on that, select modify, you can change the port here if for some reason you did adjust yours. But like I said, for this video, I did not adjust it, so we can click on cancel and we can close out of regedit. Now, unfortunately for ICQ, it does not allow for the auto account creation to work. So if we go back on the project's GitHub page, you can scroll down to the management API portion, and where it mentions the Windows PowerShell section, this is how we can create a user. The best thing really to do here is first, let's open up Notepad or Notepad++. I'll choose Notepad++ for this, and I'm just going to go to File and New, so we have a clean text file to use. Go back to the website, copy the create users commands here, paste it in here, and then really we just have to worry about line 2. So ICQ requires a number to be used for the username. So for the My Screen Name section, highlight it and let's delete that out. And the ICQ numbers need to be the number 10,000 and up. I would keep it in the 5-digit range just to be safe. So I'll just put it as 10,001. And then for the password, I'll just type in more than 6 characters. So let's type in test01 for the password for this instance. And we can copy everything here and then go to the start menu and type in PowerShell. And then if you don't have to necessarily type it all the way out, but we can click on PowerShell right here. And then let's paste this right in. If you get this warning, just click on paste anyway. Hit enter, and if all goes well, we should have a status description of created, and content is that the user account was created successfully. And that's really all we have to worry about in this section. So we can close out of PowerShell, we can close out of Notepad++, we can minimize the project website, and then let's go to start, and then hunt down ICQ. You can either do a manual search for it, or you can hunt it down in your start menu. So I'll click on ICQ. So don't click on anything else here except for existing user. And then let's type in the ICQ number count that you had created, and then the password that you created for it. And then click on next, and you'll get this registration complete successfully section. ICQ number is set. You can feel free to change this up however you want. And then we can click on next. I would recommend just unchecking all of these for right now, and then click on start. And then you can go ahead and select don't show this message again and agree to start ICQ. And then you may get this firewall pop-up, select allow. If we go back to the server, we should see that login was done. Here's your ICQ number, and of course where it came from. And then of course you can feel free to dabble with ICQ. It's not really my cup of tea, however I did want to show it off, but really the AIM client is really where it's at least in my opinion. So one thing I just want to mention to safely and gracefully shut the server down is just do a Control-C. Do not click the X, as that could cause corruption. So just do Control-C, and that will gracefully shut the server down. If you want to jump into more advanced stuff, feel free to take a look at the project's very good guides and information on various things. They also have a Discord channel that you can take a look at for asking questions or hunting down answers to questions you might have. But anyhow, I'm going to continue on with the Linux variant of this guide next. Alright, so on the Linux variant of this guide, I am using Debian 12. However, you could use Ubuntu or some other Linux distribution of your choosing. However, I do know that Debian and Ubuntu are no problem to run it. However, I have not tried it on any other Linux distro, so I cannot confirm if any others will actually play nice with how I'm going to show it off today. So first, I'm going to fire up Firefox, and I'll full screen it here. So let's do a search for the Retro AIM server GitHub project, and here it is. So everything I'm going to show is going to be mentioned in the how to run section along with a few other spots within here. So if anything is not super clear to you in this guide and you need further guidance, feel free to check this out. And there is also a Discord channel that you can join to ask questions or review if anyone else has asked that question already and if it's been answered. So let me just scroll all the way back to the top. So to begin, let's go to the releases section here. It's going to have the latest font little bubble here in green. Click on this. So this is going to have a what's new section in here with this current version that we can download. It also has the commit numbers and then what the changelog mentions here. So we scroll down a little bit more. So really you have two options for Linux land here. One is if you're using an x86 processor, or if you're using an ARM-based processor like ARM64, ARM7, or a Raspberry Pi. So if you're using any of those, download that one. Or if you're on an x86 machine, like an Intel or AMD machine, you would select this. So since I'm on an Intel machine, it's an x86 processor, so I'm going to click on this to download. Then I'm going to select the folder over here so we can actually view it. And I'm going to right click on this, extract to, let's go to home, and then I'm going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it AIM server, like so. However, you can feel free to name it whatever you want. But for this guide, I'm just going to name it AIM server, click on create, and then it should bring us automatically into it, and then we can do select. Now we should be able to go to home, AIM server, and then double click into the Retro AIM server version 0.14.0. And then here are the three files we should see in here. One's going to have the MIT license, and then there is the server itself, and then there is the settings.env file. Before we kick off the server, let's go into the settings env file. Let's right click on it and open with text editor, and then I will double click this so we can see it maximized. There's going to be a number of options that you can alter here. For the sake of this video, I'm only going to show the very last piece at the bottom, and that is this whole portion. So what we're focusing on is the export Oscar_host section. So if you're planning just to dabble with this on this machine, for instance, then you can leave it as 127.0.0.1. However, if you're planning to either just use this as a server, an AIM server to connect into from other clients or other machines, then you would change this to the IP address of this server. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to change the IP address to my local IP. It does mention things that you will need to alter if you plan to have this outside facing, so others outside of your network want to connect in. You would alter this stuff and put in the IP. Then you would specify your public IP address and make sure those ports are open. I'm not going to go over that portion today. If you need further assistance setting that up, then certainly feel free to check out the GitHub guides and the Discord channel if need be. So in case you don't know how to determine the IP address of your Linux machine, then if we go up to Activities, and then let's do a search, and then type in terminal. And we can select the terminal, and then it's as simple as just typing in IP space A, hit enter, and then the IP address should show up for you. In this case, my IP address is this right here. Don't worry about the /24 on the end. We don't need that information. What we can do is we can highlight this, copy it. We can just highlight the 127.0.0.1 here, delete that out, and we can paste the IP in here. Just make sure that there are no spaces on the end of the number and that the number is all the way up against the equal sign right here. So there should be no spaces at all in here. And then if we close it, it should prompt us to save it. Let's just save it. So that should be all set. I'm just going to clear screen in the terminal as we will need to use that for the next section. All right, so to fire the retro AIM server up, let's do the following. Let's do a CD space and then the tilde symbol, aka the symbol to the left of the number 1 on your keyboard, if it's a QWERTY keyboard, and hit enter just to make sure that we are in fact in the home directory. Next, let's do CD for change directory, space, capital A, and hit the tab key, and then lowercase r, hit the tab key, and hit enter. So now we should be in this directory where these files are. You can always type in ls to see what we're currently looking for. So this looks perfectly fine. So now to kick the retro AIM server off, we need to do a period, / and then type in R and tab. I'll expand that out so it looks a little easier there to read, and then hit enter. And then we should notice that there is a oscar.sqlite file here, and that's perfectly fine. It needs a little micro-SQL database to function here. Let's drag this over and let me expand this out here. So the server is now running. So if you have outside clients, you can feel free to have them connect in now. Or if you want to set up AIM locally on this Debian box or Linux box, then you can continue on with the next steps. So over on the right, I opened up this Wine installation version 1 text document that I will have a link for in the description below. The version number could very well change if something changes within the Wine installation instructions. So my recommendation is, if you don't know how to install Wine, then download this little text document and then we will run right through all the steps. The first thing I am going to do is in the text editor, click on the little wrench icon, and then let's check line numbers so I can go right down the line numbers here. One thing I do want to mention is that it starts at the very top as the Debian 12 guide. However, if I scroll down to line 36, it also has the Ubuntu 24 section in here. You may have to make alterations to line 53 if you're on Ubuntu and it's on a certain version, then you may need to change this out. So I would just reference that in the documentation for Wine. However, since I'm on Debian 12 today, we're going to continue on with that portion. So with the server still running, that's perfectly fine. If we click the little plus icon, it should open up a new terminal window for us. And then let's do a cd tilde again and hit enter, just so that we're back to home and we're not accidentally adding anything into the server here if something does attempt to get added in. So starting off, any area that has a hashtag next to it is just a remark. So don't copy those in. This is just to mention where we are at in the process. So line 5, so we'll copy this and we'll paste it in, hit enter. If it prompts you for your password, then you would type in your password. Next up, line 8, let's do a sudo apt update. And just be patient as that pulls down. And then next up, we are going to pull in line 9, which is going to install a series of app packages here. Paste that in, hit enter, and then hit Y for yes. And I will actually make a correction on here to add a Y on here so that you will not have to type Y for yes. Hit enter. Next, let's pull in line 12, copy and paste this in, hit enter. And then line 13, copy and paste this, hit enter. And then line 16, let's copy and paste that in, hit enter. And then let's hit enter to continue. Then line 19, let's copy this and paste it in, hit enter. And then line 22, let's copy this, paste it in, hit enter, type Y for yes and hit enter. And I'll correct that also in my document so you won't actually have to hit Y to make it easier. And then just be patient as this works its magic here. Next, let's just verify that Wine is installed. So we'll copy line 25, paste it in, hit enter. So we've got Wine 10.0. And then let's kick off line 28, paste it in, hit enter. And it mentions that the .NET application will work correctly, so it's not here. So let's click on install, and it's going to download some stuff and installing. And then we should be okay to leave everything as is in this section. So we'll click OK for this, and then we should be good to go with Wine at this point. Let's go back to the GitHub page, and we'll go back to the main page, and let's scroll down. And let's take a look at the AIM client setup guide. So we'll click on this, we'll scroll down just a little bit. So since we are doing the Linux guide, and as it mentions here, AIM versions 5.0 to 5.1.3036 run perfectly well on Wine. So we are going to deal with AIM 5.1.3036 in this guide. So I'm going to go to archive.org. So we're going to right click on this, open it in a new tab, just so we don't lose our place. And then let's download the Windows executable. And let's pop open the downloads folder. And then let's minimize Firefox. And we can close out of the Wine installation document. And let's go back over to the terminal. So once again, I'm going to click on the plus sign. And then let's do a cd space tilde here, hit enter. I'm just going to clear the screen to make this clean. Type clear, hit enter. Let's do a change directory. So cd space capital D O N, and then we should be able to hit tab here. And then let's just make sure that the AIM installer is actually still here, and here it is. One thing we can actually do here is highlight this and then copy that because we're going to need it. And then type in Wine space and then paste in the AIM executable, hit enter, and then let's go through the installation steps here. We'll click yes for the user agreement, next, next once more, select I'm permanently connected through a LAN, click on next, you can change your country and then just put in a zip code, uncheck the makenetscape.com my homepage, click next, next once more, let it install. If all goes well, we should have the setup as complete. Click OK to start AOL Instant Messenger, so we'll click OK. Let's click cancel for this, and then let's go to setup, and it should hopefully go to the sign on, sign off section. If it doesn't, click into it, and then click on connection, and then in the host section under server, blank this out. So if you want to connect locally to just this server that you're on, then you can do the 127.0.0.1, or if you set the IP to be the IP address of your of this machine on your network, then you can type it in here, and then we can click OK, and OK once more. And the server by default has screen name auto creation turned on. So if we blank out new username and just type in test1, and then tab down and type in your password. And I do notice that the text is a little slightly garbled here, but that's okay. We can click on sign on. And then at this point, Wine wants Gecko installer. So let's click on install. And then we don't need to go through this little welcome wizard here, but you can feel free to if you really wanted to. We'll click on cancel, and then we can get out of the AOL Instant Messenger little Yahoo will be right back thing. And then at this point, we should be good to go. We're using AIM, and then we can do a Control-C to get us out of Wine, and we can close out of that terminal. And any connections signing in or disconnecting or any messages will show up in the terminal here. So if you're ever curious on things happening, then you can monitor this section. Now, if you closed out of AIM and you're wondering how you can run it again on Linux, if we go up to Activities and then go to the Show Applications section down here on the right, the dots, and then just keep using the arrows until you find AOL Instant Messenger, and then just clicking it will relaunch it for you. But I'll close it once more and close it of all that. Now, if you're curious on using the ICQ client, then I'm going to continue on with that process now. Now, if you didn't install AIM and go through the Wine steps that I showed previously, just go through those steps and then skip the AIM portion if you don't want it, and then continue right on with the ICQ section here. So let's go back to the project's website, and we'll go back one page. Let me scroll up here. So here is the ICQ client setup guide. So let's click on this. And let's click on Linux. So once again, you'd run it under Wine. We already have Wine installed, so we can continue on. So step one, let's go to archive.org's website. So I'll right click on this, open link in new tab, and let's download the Windows executable. So with it downloaded, let's go ahead and get Firefox out of the way. Let's go back to the terminal and let's click on the plus sign. And then let's do a change directory with the tilde. Hit enter, and then let's change directory and type in capital D, lowercase o, lowercase w, hit tab, so it should say downloads, hit enter. Now let's just verify that the ICQ client is in here, so I'll just type in ls to list, and here is the ICQ 2000b.exe, so that's perfect. One thing that'll make this a little easier is actually we can copy this and then type in Wine space and then paste in the executable's name and hit enter, and then we should go through the installation setup portion here. Click next one more time, let it install, and just wait as this works its magic. And if all goes well, we should get the installation complete, so click on OK. And for right now, let's go ahead and close out of this using the X, and I'm going to do Control-C in the terminal so that we get the ready terminal state back. And we're going to type in Wine space reg edit. Should look like that. Hit enter, and then we'll go to H key current user, expand that, expand out software, expand out Mirabilis, expand out ICQ, and then click into default prefs. And then let's go to default server host, right click on this, select modify, drag this down, blank out the value data. So once again, if this is just running locally on the server and you've not set the server's IP here, you could do 127.0.0.1, or if you set the server actual IP in the env file, then we can do 192.168.60.174, and of course your IP address is going to be different than this section than what I'm typing in here. However, type in your IP and we will click on OK. One thing just to mention is that there is a default server port configuration here as well. If for some reason you changed up your port numbers, you can edit it here. So if you right click, modify, then just change up the value data number here to the port that you changed it to. However, since I didn't change my port configuration, I'm not going to alter this right now, so we'll click cancel, and we should be able to close out of Reg Editor. And before we fire up the ICQ client, we need to create an ICQ number account. We go back to the project's website again, close out of that. Under step 4, for the post-installation steps, let me open this in a new tab. And then there is the server quick start guides. I will have a link for it in the description below, but I'm just showing it. And if we scroll a little bit further down, so look for the management API section. And then since we're on Linux, let's scroll down until we get to the macOS and Linux section here. So this gives all sorts of good information to where you can actually run commands to do various things, like creating accounts in AIM or in ICQ, and then there's deleting users, change password, and a bunch of other stuff down below there. What we need to look for is this right here. This is how we can create the ICQ number. As it has referenced here, it actually has an ICQ number set. Basically, what you need to do is have at least a 10,000 number. So like in this case, it's a 100,000 number, but you could have 10,003 or 10,001 or something of that sort. Just for demonstration purposes, I will show how this is going to run. So we will copy this. Let's open up a terminal in case you closed it. Now, one thing we need to do in order to actually kick off the command is we need to type in sudo space apt or apt update, hit enter, and then if it prompts you for a password, type in your password. And then next up, let's do sudo space apt or apt space install space curl, and let's do a space dash y, so it just accepts it, hit enter, and then just be patient as it crunches, and then we should be good. So now we can paste in the curl command from the ICQ section right here. So one thing we can do is we can alter the ICQ number. We could make it an 8 if we wanted to, whatever you wanted. Like I said, the key thing is that it really needs to just stay within like a 10,000 number, so like 10,001 or something of that sort, or you could do a 100,008 like it shows here, if that makes sense. The password section has to be at least 6 characters long, so I'm just going to change this to test01, and then let's just move the cursor over to the very end and hit enter. And if all goes well, we should see user account created successfully. So just remember that number. If for some reason you forget what accounts are actually on your server, we can use this curl command right here, which will list users. So for instance, paste it in, hit enter. So we've got the test1 account that was created in the AIM section of this guide, and then there is the ICQ account. So with that all said, we should be able to now fire up the ICQ client. Now, one thing I've noticed with ICQ is that sometimes it's kind of difficult to hunt down because it doesn't show up in the applications list. So if we go back to our files window, or if you closed out of that, just go to activities and go to the filing cabinet, click on files, select home, and then do Control H. Let me maximize this. Go into the wine folder, drive C, program files x86, ICQ, and then look for ICQ.exe. Right click on it, go to open with, and then since it is an exe, you can select this option if you want, which will make it so that the exe will always open with Wine Windows Program Loaders. We can click open for that, and then at this point, we can finally click on existing user, type in the ICQ number that you built out, and then the password, and then click on next. If all goes well, we should have registration complete successfully, and then we click next, uncheck the yes, set the ICQ, and I just recommend unchecking all these to start, and then I agree, and you can also check the don't show messages, I agree, start ICQ, And then now we are in. So you can feel free to use ICQ. My preferred instant messenger is the AIM one, but to each their own. Anyhow, let me go ahead and show one other thing while I'm in Linux land here. So back over to the server, and one thing you can note here is us logging into ICQ. The graceful way to shut this down when you're done or need to shut the machine down or whatnot is just to do Control-C, and that will gracefully shut all the processes down. If you were to click the X, which I do not recommend you do, then it could cause corruption to happen. So my recommendation is do not click the X until you do the Control-C and see all the services shutting down here. So I'll close out of that. So like I said, if you want to do some customizations or something that you didn't see in this video in this Linux portion, feel free to check out more of the project's GitHub page or check out the Discord page, as someone else may have already asked the question, so feel free to search before you ask a question, as it may have already been asked and answered. So that's it for the Linux portion of this guide. Moving on will be the macOS guide for this. Alright, so for the macOS version of this guide, I am going to start by going to Safari, or whichever browser of your choosing that you might have installed. And then let's do a search for Retro AIM server. In this case, the Siri suggested website is actually pointing me right to it. So it should be the GitHub link, and I will have a link for it in the description below so you don't have to actually manually search for it. So let's scroll down here, and everything I'm going to show is going to be referenced basically from this how to run section for the macOS Intel and Apple Silicon guide, along with the AIM client setup and the ICQ client setup guides. So just an FYI, that's where I'm getting generally most of this from. Anyhow, to start, let's go to releases, and it should have the latest green little bubble and font there. So click on this. The version number could very well change depending on when you watch this video. So if we scroll down, there should be a what's new section. It'll give general information into what has been added in this newest version, along with all the changelog stuff. So if you want to take a peek at that, you can. Scrolling down to the bottom, we're looking for the Mac OS sections. So if you're using an Intel Mac, then you would choose this download. However, if you're using one of the more modern Apple machines, like the one that has an M1, an M2, an M3, or M4 chip, then you would choose this Apple Silicon download. Since I'm using an Intel-based one, I'm just going to choose this, but the directions should be practically the same. And then you may get a warning saying, are you sure you want to allow the download? We'll click allow, and I'm just going to go up to the download section. If you're using Chrome, it may come up and say that it's been blocked or something of that sort. You should be able to opt in to still allow it to download. This is perfectly safe. It's just that the way that this is configured, it just looks like it is some sort of malicious app when it is not. So it's just a false positive. Anyhow, I'm going to click on Show in Finder, aka the little magnifying glass. In here, let's right click on it, and let's copy it, and then go up to the Go section at the top, and then let's click on Home, and then let's create a new folder, and let's call it AIM server, just like that. Let's pop it open, and then let's do a paste item right into that, and then let's double click into this, and we should see 3 files in here. There should be the MIT license, the Retro AIM server, and the settings.env file or environment file. First things first, let's take a look at this settings.env file. Let's right click on it, do open with, text edit, and I'll maximize this. And there's a number of settings in here that you can feel free to take a look at and fine tune at your own risk, that is. You can feel free to research these things on the GitHub page or on the Discord channel for this project. But I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. So at the very bottom, we are looking at this export Oscar host equals and then the 127.0.0.1. So the 127.0.0.1 is referencing that this is set for the local host. So this is perfectly fine if you're planning just to fire up AIM or ICQ on just this machine to dabble with, but no one outside of your machine would be able to connect in. So this would be your local LAN, or it could also be anyone on the internet if for some reason you had this outward facing, which if you do plan to attempt to make this outward facing, then just check out this section here. I'm not going to show how to do it, but this gives some breadcrumbs, and you can also take a look at the GitHub page and once again the Discord. So anyhow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show actually setting my Mac machine's IP here so that other machines can connect into it as well that are on my local network. So let's pop open Finder. Let's click on Launchpad, and we need to get into the terminal. And there's the terminal. We'll click on it and then type in ifconfig, hit enter, and then I'm just going to hunt down my IP address, which is right here. So I'll just go ahead and copy that IP. I'll just highlight the 127.0.0.1, paste it right over top of that. Key thing is just make sure that no spaces exist after the number or between the equal sign and the number. Otherwise that could cause problems down the line. So with this now set, I'll go to File, Save, and then we can close out of that. Let's keep the terminal open for now. I'm going to maximize the terminal. Let's type in clear to clear the screen so it's a fresh, clean slate. And let's go back to our web browser. And we'll go back one here. I'm going to scroll down and let's go to the MacOS section and let's scroll down. So let's do a CD for change directory and then type in a capital A and hit tab, and then type in a capital R, hit tab, and then type in a lowercase r and hit tab, and then hit enter. And then just type in ls and hit enter so we can just take a peek at what we've got. So the 3 files are here, so that's perfect. So going back to Safari, we want to take a look at step 3, which is remove quarantine. So let's copy this out. Let's go back to the terminal, paste it in, hit enter, type in your password. That's just to make sure that the server file is not quarantined. Next up, now we can just type in period / lowercase r, hit tab, and enter. And at this point, the server is now running. So now the server is running. If you want to install AIM or ICQ on this machine, then I will continue on with those steps. So let's scroll down on this page. And then let's go to Client Configuration Guide. And let's scroll down here until we get to the macOS section. So as it mentions here, Windows AIM can run on modern macOS without a VM, including the Apple Silicon platform. So let's click on AIM for macOS project, and then let's scroll down on this page. Let's go to the releases section, click on that, and then let's scroll down here and locate the AIM 5.1 3036 for macOS. Click on this, click on installation guide, and then let's go ahead and remove the quarantine flag. So we will copy this, and then go up to shell and click on new tab. New tab with profile basic is perfectly fine. And then let's paste in what we just copied off of the website. Hit enter, type in your password, and let's go back to downloads, open in Finder, and then go ahead and double click AOL Instant Messenger, and then click on OK for the Wineskin launcher, and wait for this to work its magic here. And Wineskin wants to access files and documents, that's okay, click OK. Wants to access downloads, click OK. It says AIM 5.1.3036 will be downloaded from archive.org. Do you want to continue? Click on yes. Wait for it to work its magic here. It could take a few minutes, and just be patient as it installs. Let's click yes for the user agreement, and next one more time. And then select I'm permanently connected through a LAN, click next. Change up your country, uncheck Netscape as your home page, and then type in a zip code, click next, and just be patient as this installs. And if all goes well, we should see setup is complete. Click OK to start AOL Instant Messenger, click on OK. And for this pop-up, click on cancel, and then let's go to setup with the wrench, and it should get us right into the sign on, sign off category. If it doesn't, click on it, and then let's go to connection, and then host, blank out this current host name in there. So if you're just experimenting with this being just completely local to your machine, you don't want anyone else to connect in, then you can do the 127.0.0.1 or type in the IP address that we set, then click on OK and OK once more. And so by default, how the server is set up currently, it will actually allow for accounts to get created on the fly when someone tries to connect in. So all we have to do is type in an account here and then type in a password, hit enter, and then it will connect us right in. You can feel free to take a look at the welcome wizard here. I'm just going to click cancel. But if we go back to the actual server terminal window, then we will now see that a sign-in happened from this IP address and the username right here. Now naturally this username is unique, so multiple people can't just force auto-create the same exact account. Alright, so let's say that you want to utilize ICQ instead of AIM. Let me show those steps. Let's go back to the projects page here. So let's go to the ICQ client setup guide. Let's scroll down here, click on macOS, and then we're basically just going to follow along with what this mentions here for the most part. So first, let's copy the wineskin server via homebrew, and then let's open the terminal, and I'll just go ahead and select shell, new tab, and that was new tab, and new tab with profile basic. Let's go ahead and do a change directory, and then a space, and then a tilde command, aka the icon that's to the left of your number 1 key. Hit enter. And so next we need to install homebrew. So I will have a link in the description below for a text document that you can just copy and paste all these commands right out of into the terminal here to make it nice and easy. And we'll hit enter and then type in your password, enter, and then let's press enter one more time to continue, and then just be patient as this installs. With homebrew installed, now we're going to run this command, and then just to be safe, let's type in brew space update. Hit enter, and it's already up to date, so that's fine. If during the process you already lost the copied form of this, then we'll just copy it again, go back to the terminal, paste it in, hit enter, and just be patient as it works its magic. And then in my case, I got this warning basically just saying that I'm on macOS 12, but I'm not too concerned about that. So next up, we can go down to the launchpad, click on the winery icon, let's click on update wrapper, and click OK. And now let's click on the plus sign down here, and then click on download and install, and then click on OK, and then click on create new blank wrapper, and then let's call this ICQ wrapper. Click OK, and then just be patient as it crunches here. It'll take a moment. Then let's click on view wrapper in Finder. So next up, let's go back to the web browser. We're going to take a look at the Linux section, because we need to download the ICQ 2000B client. So right click on the archive.org link and select open link in new tab. Let's go to the new tab, scroll down and select the Windows executable, and let's allow it. Let's minimize a bunch of stuff here. All right, so now in the KegWorks, let's double click on the ICQ wrapper, click on install software, choose setup executable. Let's go to downloads, ICQ 2000b.exe, select choose, and then let's click OK for all of the access prompts. And then you may have seen that warning, but it appears as though it's still launching for us here. So let's click on next, and next one more time, let it install and work its magic. And if all goes well, we should see the installation complete. Click on OK. And then for right now, let's click out of this. Let's click OK for this warning and cancel. Go to Advanced, Tools, Registry Editor, and just give it a moment as it launches here. Let's go to, just as it actually mentions right on the page here, so we'll go HKey current user, software, Maribilis, ICQ, and then default prefs. I'll maximize this here. So we want to modify the default server host. So we'll right click on it, select modify, blank out the value data. And if you did just the local configuration without changing the IP, then you would type in the 127.0.0.1. However, we put the IP address in, so we will put that in now, and then we can click on OK. And one thing just to mention is if for some reason you change the default server port, you can edit it here. You can right click it, modify, and then change the value data number. In my case, I did not change the server port, so we can just click cancel for that, but I just wanted to mention it. And then we can close out of the registry. Now we can open this back up, click on browse, program files x86, ICQ, and then scroll down, locate the ICQ.exe, select choose. Now let's click on test run. So at this point we can click on existing user, and then before we fill this in, let's go back to the browser and let's go to the server quick start guides, and then let's scroll down and keep scrolling, and we want to look for the macOS Linux section, and then look for the ICQ section right here. Copy the ICQ section, and then we'll paste it into the terminal, and then I'll talk about it here. So there's the ICQ screen name here, and then there is the password for it. You can feel free to adjust this however you want, as long as you keep it within a certain criteria. So for instance, the password has to be at least 6 characters. So I'm just going to put in something else here. We'll do test 01, and I'll leave the ICQ number as is, but you can feel free to change the number on the end, which is really what my recommendation is. Just keep going up in numbers, leave this as is, just because of the strict rules that it has. So we'll hit enter, and then if all goes well, we should see user account created successfully. So now we can finally test this with ICQ. So let's go back to the Launchpad, click on the ICQ wrapper, and hopefully ICQ should launch for us in just a moment. It could take a moment as it crunches along here. And now we can finally click on existing user, type in the ICQ number that we created, aka 100,003, and the password that we set, and then let's click on next. If all goes well, we should see registration complete successfully, the ICQ number, and we can click on next. And then I just recommend unchecking all of these, especially the one that tries to set your default startup page. Click start, and then just do don't show this message again. I agree to start. And now ICQ is running here. One thing I just want to show off just before we finish with the Mac OS guide is how to safely shut the server down without causing any sort of corruption or anything of that sort. So if you do Control-C, that's the best method. Do not close out of it using the red button or an X up here. That could cause problems. So just do Control-C, and we should see all the services shutting down. That's key, and that means that it is a clean, graceful shutdown of the server here. So that is it for the Mac portion of the guide. If you have any questions and anything within this, then I recommend taking a look at the GitHub documentation and also the Discord channel. Feel free to search for your problem first to make sure that no one else has had it before you ask a question. Chances are someone else probably already stumbled into it, so it's worth a shot trying to search first before asking the question. Alright, that's all you need to do to get a retro AIM server and the clients running on Windows, Linux, and macOS. If you found this video to be useful, please like it and subscribe to my channel to keep up with the latest video releases. I also appreciate any donations to my Ko-Fi and Patreon to help me keep the guides churning out. Anyhow, until next time, take it easy.